going to talk to Marianne Williamson, presidential candidate. I want to show you a quick clip first.
Hey, I have an important announcement to make. As of today, I am unsuspending my campaign for the presidency of the United States. I had suspended it because I was losing the horse race, but something so much more important than the horse race is at stake here.
All right, now Marianne Williamson, presidential candidate, joins us on the TYT network. Marianne, welcome back.
Thank you. It's always good to see you. Thank you for having me.
All right, good to be with you. All right, so we both ran for president. I'm out, gone. You basically running all the way to the primary?
Well, I mean, it's clearly a message campaign at this point, but I wanted to speak in all those states where I'm on the ballot. You know, we worked hard to get on those ballots. The volunteers worked hard. There's supporters in those states. So in a couple of days, I'm off to New Mexico and then to Oregon. And then I will give another talk in Baltimore. So I'll do Maryland. Last night I did Washington, D.C. And then that'll be it. We will have wrapped it up and I will have said my piece.
Yep. And you know, I stayed in the race at least till Super Tuesday because I thought collecting delegates was important. And Uncommitted wound up collecting delegates. It was protest against Biden, but they can't vote because it's not a human being. Whereas Marianne Williamson is a human being. If you vote for her and she gets delegates, she can't actually use them. She can use them as leverage. So there's good reason to stay in for that as well. So Marianne, I wanted to talk about the overall experience though. That's why I wanted to talk to you here. So let me start at the beginning. You get into the race. What did you expect and what did you wind up getting instead?
I knew it would be hard, but I didn't know it would be as brutal as it was. You know, last time the system was satisfying to just make me out to be a joke, crystal lady, crazy lady. This time, it was vicious. Last time I had a CNN town hall. I was on CNN somewhat regularly, MSNBC somewhat regularly. This time, there was clearly a decision made and I was blacklisted. I wasn't on CNN at all. I wasn't on MSNBC at all. You can't be taken seriously as a candidate for the Democratic nomination if people who watch CNN and MSNBC never see you. And then, of course, there was not only the stuff that was laid on me by the establishment media and their smears, but also the independent media. A lot of people on the left sort of joined in. I thought the casual disregard of my candidacy based on nothing real. You know, it's one thing if people disagree with you on the issues, but this was just some explosion of, I think, misogynistic, unbelievable. You know, I think that a lot of people, particularly on the left, have to ask themselves, and I think you and I have had this conversation, are they really interested in the accumulation of power? Or is it all just some performative exercise? And I think the mean-spiritedness today, my God, Cenk, who's going to ever run for office? I felt like, you know, every day was going into a back alley and being beaten up by somebody. It's one thing if people disagree with you. That's, hey, listen, you're a presidential candidate. But so many people who don't even disagree with me. And also, I think candidate suppression is a form of voter suppression. So when the mainstream media, I mean, and you and I have talked about this, how dare they just decide that they're entitled to curate who the candidates are? This political media industrial complex of ours. You know, I'll be fine. I'm a big girl. I can go on and have a life, but this is not good for our democracy. This is not good. People should have a chance. The voters should have full exposure to all of the people who choose to run and what their ideas are for the next 4 years. It should be up to the voters. Jefferson said the only safe repository for power in this country is in the hands of the people. But if the exposure to the candidates is blocked, then the people are not given their rights in a democracy. This is not good at all.
So Marianne, you mentioned a lot of interesting things in there that I want to come back to. The mean-spiritedness, independent media, progressive media not really delivering. That's super interesting. Misogynistic treatment, that's interesting. But I want to start with the main point that you made in the beginning and the end there, which is the media. Because people are familiar with there being several different primaries, right? Sometimes people talking about the money primary or the donor primary. So whoever can collect, ungodly sums of money is in the race, and the media treats them like they're in the race. But if you're not enormously wealthy, then or have donors that are wealthy, well, that's how they weed you out in the first place, right? So then you only get to select among only the people who are already incredibly wealthy or serving the incredibly wealthy. But what is not talked about that much is the media primary. Because if the media never talks about you, then people have almost no way of knowing about your campaign. So
exactly.
It becomes a vicious cycle where they say, we don't think you're legitimate, so we're never going to share the fact that you're even running, let alone your policies, with our audience. And then we're going to say, well, you see, you didn't do well enough. We were right that you're not legitimate, and now we're not going to show you again and again and again. Aren't they actually just picking the candidates through that exact process?
Of course, they designed the whole thing. They strategized the whole thing. I mean, on one hand, the situation is rigged so that only those who have access to huge amounts of money can get anywhere near the pinnacles of power. That's the larger picture. But in terms of what happens day to day, what you just said is the point. They leave you out. People don't know you exist. So of course, people aren't going to send you money. How can you fundraise if people don't even know that you are there? And they do that for a purpose, and that's one of the reasons why they suppress you. They suppress you. They don't want people to see you, number one, because they think people might like you, particularly if you're giving the kind of anti-corporatist message that I was giving. I mean, they're not stupid. They're unethical, but they're not stupid. They know that a majority of Republicans, as well as Democrats, not as big a majority, but a majority, want Medicare for all. They know that a majority of Republicans, not as big, but also a majority of Republicans as well as Democrats, want tuition-free college and tech school. They've probably figured out that because so many Trumpsters were on the UAW picket line, when you have Josh Hawley, of all people, calling for the repeal of Citizens United, when you have J.D. Vance joined with Sheldon Whitehouse to get rid of some of these corporate tax cuts, people are figuring it out. They don't want to give a platform to people who speak into that level of anti-corporatist listening that's in this country. So yeah, so then people don't know you exist. So how can you raise money? And then they say, and of course, then they call you a long shot every time they mention you. And in my case, Cenk, this was before you got in, just outright lying, just saying the president had no opponent when absolutely the president did.
I mean, that's got to be super frustrating, right? I mean, I called it out on the show before and after I joined the race. You polled better than Nikki Haley for about 95% of this race. And they would constantly say she was the only woman in the race. They would talk about her endlessly, town halls, interview after interview after interview. Meanwhile, you're at some points 12, 13 points against a sitting incumbent president. She's at 2 or 3%. You got a 7-point lead, 10-point lead against her. And they just never ever mention you while obsessing about her. How could they not think that that is a bias? Has anyone in media ever justified that to you?
It's not that they don't think it's a bias. They feel that they are entitled to the bias. They think they know better. Their paternalism, their smugness, their arrogance. Let's not forget, these are the same people who gave us Trump the first time. But they have this attitude, we know, we got this. And how the Democratic voters just went along with it. The DNC says it's got to be Biden. It's like just people farmed out all their critical thinking. As far as Nikki Haley was concerned, you're absolutely right. There was a time she and I were polling in the same numbers. Hers was called a surge. Mine was completely erased, not mentioned, ignored. She was given a CNN town hall. When I had much higher polling numbers than Vivek Ramaswamy, Chris Christie, et cetera, they were given CNN town halls. So no, there was some invisible edict. Do not let that woman get a viral moment. And they made sure.
Now, I ran a super long shot campaign, even more long shot than yours, because I'm not a natural born citizen. And so a lot of people thought I wasn't eligible to run. That's a whole long story. But I polled higher than Chris Christie. But Chris Christie got a town hall because their assumption is if you're a corporate candidate, you deserve everyone hearing your point of view. But if you're an outsider, under no circumstances should you be allowed on TV so that people can find out about you. I don't think that, look, we might even disagree about if their bias is intentional or just, I think it's so ingrained in them that if you ask them, how's the water, like a fish in water, they say, what water? Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they look at people like yourself and me, like we're trying to hijack the Democratic Party. They are the ones who hijack the Democratic Party. You and I are Franklin and Eleanor. They're the Whitneys and the DuPonts and the Morgans.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I wrote a whole book about it, Justice Coming. Okay, so Marianne, you mentioned independent and progressive media. That's interesting. What was your experience there?
Sad. I remember someone who used to work on your program, Emma Vigeland. I heard her say one day, I like Marianne personally. I just think we're overestimating the importance of her candidacy. Really? Really?
Who's
nobody would
overestimating?
When Elon Musk had Twitter Spaces with Bobby Kennedy and Dean Phillips and Ron DeSantis, and he said he would do it for every presidential candidate. I said, I'm here. Wouldn't have me, Lex Fridman and Joe Rogan, and you didn't have me a lot, It's like I was just kind of like. And another one that was really interesting to me is she's never served in office. Neither has Vivek Ramaswamy, neither has Bobby Kennedy, neither did Andrew Yang. The things that were said about me, the way stories were contextualized about me, the smears, people who never had conversations with me, the way they would report things. It's just, it was what it was.
Yeah.
It was what it was.
So we mentioned you a couple of times and had you on, but I agree with you. I don't think we were fair enough. And I don't know who Emma thought was overestimating you. That's interesting. I'd like to find that person who was overestimating you. That's glad one exists. But yeah, I think a lot of the progressive shows, Tom Hartman, Democracy Now, etc., just stonewalled all the progressive candidates. And
Tom Hartman, yeah. Tom Hartman endorsed Biden immediately, wouldn't have me on. He's an old friend of mine. And what you just said about Amy Goodman, she had Cornell on the day after he announced. With me, she had me on the morning of the New Hampshire primary. What is that? Really, honestly, Cenk, and I'm like asking, it's not even a rhetorical question. What is that?
Yeah, no, I think that unfortunately, there's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome here. And a little bit of Bernie Sanders influence. And so Bernie basically, after he lost to Biden, said, Biden's my best friend and we're gonna work together and we're gonna be a team. So everybody power down. And that hurt the movement way more than he realizes. And I don't think he did it out of bad intent. I think that he was genuine and he really thought that Biden's his friend and he really thought they were gonna work together and he really thought that Biden was gonna do these things for progressives. I would say that almost all of it was a lie and Bernie got hoodwinked. I mean, $15 minimum wage was the bare minimum, and he immediately got rid of that as kind of a slap in the face of Bernie. But Bernie told people to not oppose Biden, and he immediately endorsed Biden. AOC immediately endorsed Biden, and I think that a lot of the media took that the left-wing progressive media took that as a sign of, oh, we're all supposed to bow our heads. Hey, everybody, collectively bow our heads, and Trump is evil. But we know Trump is evil. We know Trump's a bad guy. But our whole lives, we've been telling everybody, our audiences, yeah, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a progressive in the primary. So
the opposite. It's a reason to. People would say to me, how can you do this, Marianne? Don't you realize the fascists are at the door? And I always responded, I'm doing this because I know the fascists are at the door. I agree with Franklin Roosevelt. He said we wouldn't have a fascist takeover in this country as long as democracy delivers on its promises. The progressive message is that there be unequivocal advocacy for the working people of the United States and for democracy to deliver on its promises. If we had a progressive candidate saying, in the next 4 years, we will work to give you universal health care. We will work to give you tuition-free college and tech school. We will work to give you subsidized childcare. In other words, we will work to help you materially improve your life. That is what would beat Trump. What is their strategy now? Close your eyes, cross your fingers, and raise enough money for TV ads. Or remind people what you've done in the last 4 years, but not in any way say what you're going to do in the next 4 that will actually help them. Cenk, we have 39% of the American people who are regularly skipping meals in order to pay their rent. In the poorer neighborhoods of the United States, and there are way too many of them, by the way, people are regularly selling their blood plasma in order to pay their rent. We have over 1 million people rationing their insulin. We have a majority of Americans, 70% say they live with chronic economic stress. People's lives are falling apart. So this idea that only Biden can beat him because Biden beat him last time. To me, that's like saying to a person, an actor who won the Oscar last year, well, if you won last year, you'll win this year. It's a different movie and it's a different plot this year. So I think it's, as you have said many times, I totally agree with you. You've pointed out the Democrats would be in a better position today. President Biden would be in a better position today if they had had a robust primary. If they had let him debate all of us, they'd be in a better position. And I think you and I would have been in a better position to win.
By the way, they should be thanking you because they pushed almost everyone else out of the Democratic primary and then the Democratic Party altogether. And now Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West are running as third-party candidates because of their incredibly dumb tactic of don't have a primary and progressives shouldn't run, nobody should run, outsiders shouldn't run. And I get it, that's what MSNBC is gonna say every time, right? But for some of the progressive folks to say the same exact thing was not only wrong, it was counter to what they promised their audience their whole lives, and honestly, not that bright. Right now, we've got a terribly weak candidate that they enabled. This idea of, oh, he won last time is honestly that's just one of the most irrational things I have ever heard. Anyone who made that argument should be deeply embarrassed about it. You think polling doesn't change? Favorability doesn't change? What kind of political novice child would think that?
What kind of voter so farms out their own critical thought processes? These concocted narratives by the DNC. Oh, we don't primary a sitting president. Well, I'm old enough to remember Lyndon Johnson. He was a sitting incumbent president, and Eugene McCarthy primaried him, and Bobby Kennedy Sr. primaried him. We didn't call that weird. We called it democracy.
Yep, and so look, credit to the folks who had us on and who actually had an open mind. So Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski, The Rising on the Hill had me on a couple times. I think they had you on as well.
Yes, Rising and Breaking Points and Kyle and Crystal and Bree, they were, much love, respect, and gratitude really forever. They were absolutely fair to me.
That's right, and they're more populist in their bent as instead of, oh, Democratic Party will be your servants. And by the way, any progressive that still thinks, oh, we shouldn't have covered any other progressives, we should have just kissed Joe Biden's ass and that was the better political strategy, I'm happy to debate that anytime, any place. Okay, so you mentioned mean-spiritedness overall, and that, God, it feels so true about politics at large. But tell me what you experienced that made you say that.
Just the lies, the attacks, the smears, the casual insults and rudeness that just in the way they would, that I don't think they would talk about a man that way. I really don't. I have had a 40-year career and I never felt that my sex limited me in any way. In any way, I never felt that my being a woman, any prejudice against me as a woman or anything like that limited my opportunities. But in politics, or at least in this race, it was really extraordinary, yeah.
So that's really interesting. So let's talk about the misogyny for a second, and then I'll come back to the general topic. But so tell me how you experienced that.
Just the way I would be trashed. In a way that, if something happened on my campaign versus if the same thing happened on any man's campaign, the narrative, it was only, I felt like it was like the 16th century and we were burning the witch here. The archetype was, it was like, I couldn't believe it. It was like something out of a Jungian textbook or something like that. She's crazy, she's crazy, she's crazy, she's nutty, she's crazy. She's mean too, like the witch in Hansel and Gretel or something. And of course the psyops. What I love about some aspects of the left is they think they're so sophisticated and they're so naive. They seem to know nothing about how psyops works. They seem to know nothing about how vulnerable they are to such obvious tricks of the trade. But I'm not at this point. You process that, you go forward, and there's a certain point where you keep it in the closet of your own heart or your own best friends. I don't want to spew all that here.
Yeah,
I would like to talk about something you were mentioning about Uncommitted and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I was interviewed earlier today on Al Jazeera Arab, and I really appreciated the interview. It was great, actually. But they asked what I would do if I were president. I said that I would call Netanyahu and I would say not one more dollar, not one more weapon. We cannot align with this strategy in any way, shape, or form. And we had a pretty, long conversation about it. And I just feel with you and with me as well. Except in Michigan, where I do admire it because I lived in Michigan. I understand the sizable Arab population there, Arab American, Palestinian American, Muslim American. So I felt it was a respectable show of democracy and an important one in Michigan. But in some of these states, a hashtag cannot call up Bibi Netanyahu and say no more. So I think that's really been, I know it was hurtful for you and for me. And so what is this? Why can people get so excited about something that is in fact just playing into the hands of the Democratic Party? Because all you're trying to do is influence the president. You and I were trying to replace him, which seems to me it was a much stronger position because in both your case and my case, we have a different view, not just on whether or not there should be a ceasefire, but on whether there should be a completely redesigned Middle East. So I thought that was also a very unfortunate element.
Yeah. So look, Uncommitted in Michigan, I could live with it in my particular case because I wasn't on the ballot. I was denied ballot access in Michigan. And Uncommitted, it was actually a slot on the ballot. Now, if I was running the strategy, I would have gone in a direction of an actual human being like Marianne for the reason I'm going to state. But beyond Michigan, I thought it was an unacceptably poor strategy at best, if not intentionally meant to help Biden. Because the uncommitted delegates go to Joe Biden, thereby making them useless. Whereas if Marianne or I got those ballots, those delegates, we could have used them to help the people of Gaza as leverage, et cetera, in a best case scenario. But at least you had a fighter's chance, as opposed to the delegates going straight back to Joe Biden and Democratic politicians theoretically on the Palestinian side, high-fiving about how they secretly helped Joe Biden. So anyways, I've got my issues with that, and I was on the ballot in Minnesota where they did pick up delegates. If you can't back the first Muslim American presidential candidate who has the strongest voice on Gaza, well then you didn't want to back anybody. You wanted to do a half measure and go.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think not only on that issue, but on a lot of them, Cenk, the issue is, are you actually trying to help people? Are you actually thinking about the ways you could help the people of Gaza? Are you actually trying to think of the ways that you could help the people who lack health care in this country or are burdened by college loan debts or whatever? Or is this all some performative exercise for you? I think the left, a lot of aspects of the left, there's I don't know. I remember when the left had more spine, more political spine, and were more interested in the accumulation and the exercise of actual political power.
Yeah, 100%. So look, this isn't just kvetching, guys. One, we want you to learn from our experience. That's why I'm having Marianne on and tell you things that we don't normally talk about in the context of a campaign. And number two, most importantly, it's important for next time. Next time, we have to coalesce around a progressive candidate. We shouldn't listen to any nonsense, even if it comes from so-called progressive media that says, no, bow your head, bow your head. It must be the corporate Democrat. That is outrageous and ridiculous. So let's not make these mistakes again. But back to you, Marianne. Another thing that I noticed that I've found to be so jarring, and again, it's not about you, it's about the process and the pointing out the hypocrisies and the obvious inconsistencies. So when anybody talked about Amy Coney Barrett's religion, for example, Dianne Feinstein back when she was alive, she earlier, not before Barrett came to the Supreme Court and when she was an appellate judge, confirmation hearing, Dianne Feinstein mentioned her religion once, like lightly. Right, and that was because, that's terrible. How dare you question everybody's faith? Whenever they talked about you, they had no problem questioning your faith. Crystal lady, kooky, spiritual, ha ha ha, she's spiritual. Like, what did that feel like? And like, did you feel like, what is this Alice in Wonderland? I thought we couldn't talk about people's faith, and you guys are ripping into my faith.
It wasn't even a questioning of my faith. It was just a diminishing of my personality, a trashing of my personality. That's what I mean by the misogynistic stuff. I don't even think that was anti-faith. The truth of the matter is I write about universal spiritual themes in all the great religious and spiritual traditions of the world. So that within those, I'm a pretty traditional person. If I'm writing about Buddha, or I'm writing about Moses, or I'm writing about Jesus, the actual themes that I discuss are pretty theologically traditional. So this was people, there's a term, contempt prior to investigation. And there were just people who decided they didn't want to like me. And it didn't matter what I would say. And whether it was lying about if somebody actually read my issues pages or actually heard what I believed about something, that's not where the problem lay. Certainly when I talk to audiences, I talked here in Washington, D.C. last night. I mean, there was something about me, to be honest. It's a mystery to me, actually, but it was vile. Not that I'm a perfect person, because I'm not, but I'm not that person that they made up, that doppelganger. It really was. It was a doppelganger of a person who, when I read about that person, I wouldn't like her either. But the fact that people didn't know that they had been manipulated into seeing me that way, and then they thought they were so cool to reject that view when it had been concocted to get them to reject it. Fairy dust thrown in people's eyes. Nothing to see there, guys, nothing to see there.
Yeah.
And especially among people who I was saying everything that they purport to care about. So.
Yep. So doppelganger is a good way of putting it, because I've said in the past, when I ran for Congress, if I read the stories about me in the LA Times, New York Times, etc., I wouldn't vote for that guy, right?
Exactly.
And because they created a doppelganger that theoretically is me and had my name and those type of things, but everything else about it was a concoction, totally not true. I've gone over it a million times where they said, he's anti-Muslim, has a long history of being anti-Muslim. I have a long history of being Muslim. I mean, it's absurd. They never even mentioned that I'm born Muslim, raised Muslim, family's Muslim. Didn't even mention it. I just give you that as one example because it's so stark and so clear. But like the doppelgangers that they create you shouldn't believe them. They're fictions of the basically corporate media's imagination. And what drives me the craziest, Marianne, is when progressive groups, progressive leaders, progressive media, etc., believe the mainstream media, which they've been criticizing all along. But the minute they introduce a progressive doppelganger for us that is right-wing or not rational or not serving the public interest, it feels like everybody instantly believes it.
Well, I don't know. In my case, there were also some of those lefties who created it too. It's the smug, self-righteous, arrogant, mean-spirited stuff is on the left, just like it's on the right.
Yeah, and on the left, everybody loves to tear people down so that they can, feel great about, aha, I got someone. Yes, but what did you accomplish? How did you help rather than hurt? How did you build rather than tear down? And that's why I always respect Marianne so much, because she's a very rare person who had the courage to try to build and do something positive in the world. So, but along those lines, Marianne, one more question. If you could do anything differently, what would you do differently?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I look through my forgiveness list, it's my own as well. I did some ridiculous hires and some wrong-minded fires. There were some people on my campaign who I can only hold myself responsible for the lack of wisdom. And there were a couple of people, not that I personally let go, but that I let others let go, that I think deserved more from me. And I believe that in terms of the campaign itself, I was not who I should have been. I was not, what would happen is, like, you're so afraid because of the way the press follows your every move that you're afraid to make certain moves. Like, I can't let that person go. I should have just done it anyway. But the way, once again, if Dennis Kucinich leaves the Bobby Kennedy campaign, it's just, oh, Dennis Kucinich is no longer the Bobby Kennedy. If someone leaves my campaign, she's crazy. She's such a crazy person and nobody can work with her. And so, yeah, I did not put together the campaign. My volunteers deserve better. My donors deserve better. I think you have to take 100% responsibility for your life experience, or you pay the price of not being able to change it. So, if you say to me, if there was a tombstone for my campaign, I would say they were mean and I was stupid. People were mean and I did not build on my end. I could have done better. I totally am proud of the message of this campaign. I'm proud of the issues. I'm much more than not proud of how I articulated them when I was actually given a chance to do that. But when it comes to building a campaign, I could have done much better, and I regret not having done so.
But so, Marianne,
but there were some wonderful, wonderful people. I want to make that clear. There were some very, very wonderful people who worked on the campaign, and extraordinary volunteers and supporters. Just, I'm forever grateful, forever grateful.
So, but look at what Marianne just did. She bravely admitted to her own shortcomings, right? And I did likewise when I ended my campaign. Wouldn't it be amazing if the Democratic Party could do likewise? Wouldn't it be amazing if mainstream media could do likewise? But but it's and honestly, the leaders of left-wing groups, etc. If you did a little self-reflection and go, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What could we do better next time around so we don't keep constantly falling into this trap, right? And I wish they would have the courage that you did, Marianne, in not just that analysis now, but in entering in the first place and taking all of those slings and arrows against you. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you on behalf of progressives and the country for trying to provide an alternative.
Well, right back at you. Much love to you. It was an honor to be with you in that process. It's an honor to know you, and I thank you. Everything that you've talked about in the last few seconds. It's that Teddy Roosevelt line about the man in the arena, right? You and I were in the arena, and we're still in the arena in our own way. So thank you very, very much, Cenk.
Absolutely. And so if you're in one of the remaining states, Marianne Williamson is a profile in courage and is an actual progressive alternative, and probably one that we all should have supported from day one to give her a fighter's chance against Joe Biden. So Marianne, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.